All right.
Well, yeah, Basil. I've got my tie on. Of course I do, because you know, cats can only see red as a color, and then everything else is kind of a black and white and gray kind of thing. But yeah, I do have a co-host. Wait. Okay, hold on.
Oh.
Basil says he can't see you. The only way to see you is
to get
your choice.
Red.
Your choice.
I think only this one fit over my head. I have a big head.
And you don't have to keep it on for very long.
Oh, okay. Just so he can see me.
Can you see Emily now?
I think so.
Yeah, he can. Yeah.
I've got a big head.
Okay, you're safe now, but you got to put the humbug in front for a second.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, I got it.
Because Basil wore that on a recent show. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay. Now, can you see Emily? He said, yeah. Well, actually, what he said was.
Oh, so we have Basil here and his avatar.
Don't interrupt Basil. Basil said, which translates because Emily doesn't speak cat yet.
No, I don't.
That translates out as yeah.
Okay.
So here we are. We're obviously our guest on the show is Basil BuddhaCat, who's the host of his own TV show, Basil BuddhaCat Presents! Exclamation point. Not to be confused with the other Basil BuddhaCat shows on Comcast. But and we're going to talk about, because Basil's been traveling around the countryside. He's actually been traveling around through many countries here in North America. He's been to the country of Kentucky. He's been to the country of Louisiana. He's been to the country of Arkansas, or as the folks in Arkansas say, we're not Kansas. We're Kansas with an extra AR at the beginning, because we're or whatever. We're pirates. Arkansas.
Do people really confuse Arkansas with Kansas?
Well, it's the same spelling except for the AR.
All right, go on. Sorry.
And he's also been in a country a little closer to home, a little country called Connecticut. And he's been checking out the elections there, and he's here to talk to us about elections in many countries: Connecticut, Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, Colorado. He's been all over the place. Now, Emily, for the last 2 weeks, has been back in the country of Italy.
That's right. I was.
Which is not quite as close to home as is, except for amongst all Italian Americans who have the Italy here with them in their hearts.
Yeah, we have a lot of Italian. I mean, I think there's even representation. I get stuff in the mail from Stamford. There's an Italian representative for Italian Americans and Italian citizens in Stamford.
Okay.
Who can vote in elections.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we can vote in Italian elections.
That's right. You're dual citizenship.
Yeah, I am.
Joe Mioli, who lives down in Westport, who was a state representative, has dual citizenship.
Oh, okay.
So he's back and forth also.
Right.
And he votes in Italian elections and also votes here in American elections in Connecticut. He was a state representative for he may still be. I don't know. Shout out to Joe Mioli in Westport, and also to our friend in Westport, Sal Liccione, who Emily and I both know.
That's right.
Emily's met Sal, and Sal's our good friend, political gadfly Sal, who's involved in a lot of elections and pretty cool guy. Shout out Sal. Shout out Joe Mioli.
That's right.
And since it's Sal Liccione, another great Italian name. While we're shouting out to Italian Americans, let's shout out to who I grew up with, John Razzo Girardi.
Oh.
John Girardi in Stanford.
All right.
Shout out.
Shout out to John.
And also, let me think. I don't want to miss anybody. I probably will miss a lot of people otherwise. But shout out to Dr. V, Dr. Volpentesta.
That's right.
Italian American. Shout out to a bunch of other Italian Americans.
Don Gogliatino.
Don Gogliatino. Again, another great Italian American who also has a show on Comcast. So that's pretty cool. But let's get down to the nub of the matter.
Okay.
You've told me in the past about Italian elections.
Okay.
What's going on in Italy? I know there's not an election going on now, but how do they run? How do they run elections in Italy?
Well, it's interesting because there are a lot of different parties in Italy. Like here we have the Democrat, Republican, but there they have like 50 different parties. You have the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, the Labor party, the Green Party, there's one with a big flower on it, like the sunflower. I don't know, but
so what happens then? I mean, you've got 50 different parties, and
right.
let's say the top vote getter in an election is a candidate for whatever party and gets like 15% of the vote. Are they the head of the government?
Well, I think what happens is you have one head. Right now it's Renzi. He's like 38 years old. He's really young,
cool.
My age, and he's trying to get rid of all the old people. I mean, just the old way of thinking, and that the way he wants to change things up in Italy right now.
Does the Pope have a party? Oh no, that's a whole different country. That's right. Vatican is a whole different. That's a whole different country.
Yeah, that is.
That's not even really part of Italy, even though it's right in the center of Rome. It's sort of like another dimension within the city of Rome.
It's true. But it's just...
So go ahead, yeah.
No, it's just interesting that I think what happens is you have the premier, and then you have all the prime minister and all the different ministers from representing the different parties.
Yeah.
He's just the head of everybody. But
well, I guess,
he's trying to just change things up a little bit, like... You have old way of thinking, and he wants, like there, for example, if you have a job working for the government, for the state, you get your job, you take a test, and you have that job for life, and you don't even really have to work, you just have your job, and you can't be fired. So he wants to, and you just get a pension, and so all these people are being paid for life and having these pensions and not really having to work. So, and
not that anybody nowadays, not that anybody really works.
Right.
We're all sort of like, do hobbies and call it work and oh, hey, wait a second.
Right. And a lot of young people are going to school, but if they could stay at home and live off their parents' and grandparents' pensions, they just...
Basil, you didn't bring your any pasta. You said you were going to get a very famous gravy, a very famous pasta sauce to add to your collection of corporate sponsors. But I see you brought one of them along, or a couple of them along. And one of them, and I'll show the audience. I got to show the name too.
Tootsie Roll.
Yeah. I got to reach this way instead of that way because it's a reverse field. So Basil's favorite candy is Tootsie Roll, and he's very proud of the fact that Tootsie Roll is a corporate sponsor. And his tagline for Tootsie Roll is, if you want to know for sure that Basil's favorite candy is Tootsie Roll, look in his litter box. Look in his litter box. There's your evidence. It's all the evidence you need that Tootsie Roll is Basil's favorite candy.
So do I think what happens if one party gets more of a vote than another? I think all parties are represented in. You have the head premier, and then you also have a president. The president, but that's kind of like he doesn't really have a strong role. As a president of the republic, he's like 90 years old. He's just really now doesn't really have any real power. But but the prime minister, that would have been like Berlusconi. Once upon a time.
Oh my God, yeah. Now here's the famous question that everybody always asks here about Berlusconi. Because we know that when Mussolini was prime minister of Italy, the trains always ran on time. I mean, everything else was screwed up in the country, including a war going on. But the trains ran on time, so that's his tagline. Right. It says, hey, the country might be screwed up, but at least the trains are running on time. Right. There's nowhere to go, but at least you can get there pretty quick on the train.
But interestingly enough, are
the trains running on time now?
Yes, the trains are running on time.
Well, that's not bad compared to America.
No. But it is. I was in Perugia, and I was at a museum, and they're having it was in Umbria at least. It was the 70th anniversary of the resistance after World War II. So there's a big
when they hung the dude up and his wife up by their heels and hit him with bocce balls
and killed him in a big piazza. So so it's interesting to see that part of history. When Americans came up and they said the English and Americans saved Italy from fascism, and then Germans were coming from the north, and Americans coming up through Sicily.
So they fought they kind of fought they had their fun at the expense of Italy, who got caught in the middle of all that.
Right, and then it was interesting. I learned a lot. about history, World War II, and what it was interesting because actually there was a civil war going on within Italy because you had the fascists and the partigiani who were the anti-fascists, and they were having a war among themselves.
Partigiani, that's like partisans?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so you had the fascists and the anti-fascists fighting against each other and then fighting against the Germans, too. And then, first Italy was aligned with Hitler or Mussolini, and then they turned against each other. Anyway, so it was very enlightening, and I learned a lot about the history and the culture, and now they have this new young prime minister. They're trying to shake things up a bit.
38. That's pretty cool.
So, but it's tough in anything when you have a lot of older people in one mindset and you want to change everything. He just wants to get rid of a lot of even people in the chamber, who's in there.
Sort of like pick up and start over again to a great degree.
Yeah.
Oh, well, hold on.
Okay,
Basil. All right, hold on. I gotta quote him and then translate for the audience, the members of the audience. Because I guess none of the audience really speaks Italian on Progressive. Speaks cat on Progressive Soup.
No.
On Progressive Soup. But some of our audience on Basil BuddhaCat Presents! Exclamation point. Speak cat. But Basil just whispered in my ear. Okay. Said, enough about Italy.
Right.
Enough about Italy. Because Basil's actually, he claims he was born in Catania. So he often tells me, sono italiano de Catania.
Okay.
Whereas just like I will tell people, sono italiano de Betel. Because even though I wasn't born here, that's my place that I call home. But Basil claims he's from Catania, and I don't know anything different. I have no facts to prove otherwise, so we'll take his word for it. But he wants to talk about, because he's been doing some traveling. And he's been going around to a lot of different countries in North America, observing recent election processes. And amongst those countries are a little country called Kentucky, a little country called Louisiana, whereas the Louisianans call it Louisiana, not Louisiana. He's been to, help me out, Basil, he's been to Colorado, he's been to Arkansas, and that other state which sounds like Arkansas and is almost spelled exactly like Arkansas. Arkansas. Yeah, it's just got the extra R and the AR in front of it because apparently everybody in Arkansas are transplanted Kansans, but they're all pirates. That's why they say
Now, why are you calling them
Arkansas?
Why are you calling them states and countries instead of states?
Well, America is a very loose confederation, apparently, at least nowadays, and it's probably always been that way.
Right.
A very loose confederation of 50 different countries who have their own self-interests, and at times join together in little subgroups and break away and leave. Like in 1860, a bunch of them broke away from America and decided they were going to be their own. They were going to be their own little confederation, the Confederate States of America.
Right.
And unfortunately, as it turns out, President Abraham Lincoln fought a war to bring them back, and unfortunately, he won. Because it probably would have been better off if those states had stayed apart. We had, instead of building a wall between America and Mexico, we could have built a wall between the northern states and the southern states and kept those redneckies out.
But would slavery have been abolished if we hadn't?
Well,
if they hadn't.
There are a lot of people out there that claim, and that might include our good friend Kevin Gallagher. I'm not sure if that's one of his thoughts. But a lot of people claim that actually, it was a waste of time because slavery would have ended anyway.
Oh.
Within another, 200, 300, 400, 1,000 years, it would have been over in the South anyway.
Okay.
Because cotton will be no longer king. So, what do you need slaves for anyway at that point? So eventually, slavery would have ended of its own volition. But Basil, there's somebody peeking over your shoulder. We had a loss in our family recently. Basil, who of course passed on 3 years ago and is only here because somebody managed to take a photo of him while he was still alive. Basil had a mate named Lilith, and Lilith was part of the family until a couple Sundays ago, and she had gone downhill really quickly, and by the time it was a week before she passed, she wasn't eating anymore. And cats, they'll stop eating. They'll maybe take a little sip out of the water bowl every once in a while. But she wasn't eating anymore. Her last trip to the litter pan, she came out and no, she didn't come out and drop a Tootsie Roll behind her, but she came out and she caught one of her toes on the edge of the litter pan, and from that point forward, her rear legs stopped working. So she was pretty much just lying in her little gray bed, and she was very much mentally with us. You could pet her and she'd respond and everything, but she was clearly going downhill fast. We didn't want her to suffer, so we brought in our good friend veterinarian Jeff came in, and Jeff Hubsher, who was one of his offices out of Mill Plain Road, good friend of the family, came out and administered a sedative to Lil, and then administered something that was reddish looking that took her out really quickly, and we had a chance to be with her during that last hour or so, and it was pretty sad, but it was good that she didn't have to suffer, and we remember her with her right on down to her last friendly meow. Aww. Or as Basil says.
So Basil and Lilith are reunited.
They are reunited. They're back together, and here's that's right.
That's right.
And here's Lilith, an avatar of Lilith right behind Basil, and I'm getting a little weepy-eyed, but
let's talk about the elections.
Yeah, let's go back to the elections. Okay, that's really what Basil's here for.
Election day is tomorrow.
So we have the elections coming up, and we've had, it seems like about 3 minutes after a presidential election is over and decided, we're already talking about the next presidential election. It's right. Like who's like, January 20th, 2013, President Obama is sworn back in as the president, and January 21st, it's already, hey, what about 2016? Let's start talking about that already. Who's going to be the next president?
Right.
In fact, we might even be thinking about who's going to be president. I mean, the Clintons just had a grandchild.
That's right.
When's she going to be eligible to be president?
That's
about
right.
another 40 years or so.
Well, what are we saying about Hillary? Are we talking about hers?
That's old news. We've been talking about Hillary Clinton being a candidate for president for, I don't know, forever. It seems like.
Okay.
But there's her, and there's all these guys, all these nuts from the other side. Rand Paul, who's named after who was father. Paul, I guess. No,
Ron Paul.
Thank you. And apologies, Billy. Billy Michael would take offense to this, not calling Ron Paul by his correct name. But his son, Rand Paul, is one of the key candidates for the Republicans in 2016. And his rallying cry is, hey, I'm not as nutty as those other crazy idiots. So that's his calling card, is that I'm less nutty than the other cornball idiots that are running against me, including Ted Cruz from Texas.
And how about the gubernatorial race?
That's right, gubernatorial races. A bunch of them coming up on Tuesday. Yeah, yeah. Basil, in his travels, Basil stopped in a little state known as Connecticut, and he's been keeping an eye on. Oh. He's been keeping an eye on what's going on there.
Right.
And what's your observation on that, Basil? What do you say about Connecticut? What's going on there, and what's your observation about it? Okay. He said it's really pretty revolting what's going on there because there's two guys running against each other, and they both have executive experience.
Right.
One has 4 years executive experience as governor of Connecticut.
Right.
And the other dude has executive experience as part of the provisional authority in Iraq after Saddam Hussein was overthrown. He was part of that crew that went in there and tried to turn Iraq into a little America, and they threw out all the they fired all the government workers and tried to privatize everything.
Interesting.
And so this is his claim to fame, that he screwed up Iraq as an executive. So, hey, come on, let me be executive. Let me be the governor of Connecticut and see what I can do there. I promise I'll do better. Of course, he probably maybe couldn't do much worse than he did in Iraq. So that's one of Basil's observations. He's been watching some of the local congressional races too, because Basil and I are both very, very positive about the notion of hunting. Basil says, look, he doesn't like deer prancing across his yard any better than the next guy. And there's a lot of deer out there, and you got to do something about the population because the wolves are all gone. Basil claims he chased all of them away, but there are no bears around, so there's no natural predators for deer. So you kind of have to. People have to kind of step in and have two choices: either thin the population out, or there'll just be so many deer that they'll eventually have a collapse of the population, which is bad too.
Well, I haven't noticed that many deer this year, actually.
There might be more hunting going on.
All right, yeah, because
there might be.
I was the first week in November every year. I drove out to Hartford for this event, and I hit a deer one year, but this year I didn't notice. Unlike I-91, but this year I didn't notice haven't noticed any deer.
I've hit a deer before, and it's a horrible experience.
So I haven't really noticed that many deer at this season, So
That's
maybe
good.
there is I don't know, Basil.
In a little town next door known as Brookfield.
Yeah.
They do bow hunting, and that's actually it's very humane in the fact that you have to thin the population out because there's no natural predators. So they have archers, bow people with a bow and arrow.
Right.
They position themselves up in trees and wait. And when a deer comes underneath, it's zing, done, dead, over.
Lovely.
And then they take the carcass of the deer. They cut it, whatever you do with it to let the blood out, all that stuff, and then they take the food to the soup kitchen. So it gets used for a good purpose.
Oh, good.
And in the meanwhile, helps thin down the population so there's enough food over the winter for deer, so there's no mass starvation.
Right.
So we love Bambi, and all that stuff, but the reality is, and we recognize that hunters are an important part of that reality in thinning out the population.
Yep.
Not to be confused with hunters that are carrying around AK-47s. But back to Basil's observation about Connecticut.
Yeah.
Basil and I have a good friend, Dan Carter,
Right.
and he's a decent guy. He's kind of an old style Connecticut Republican.
A lot of people are impressed with him.
Yeah. Now that I got through the good stuff, let's go on and do the bad stuff. And it's really only one major issue with Dan. And that Dan was one of very few people, really only one or two people out of all the representatives and state senators in Connecticut that voted against the gun bill.
Especially after the Newtown shooting.
Yeah, and Dan has a portion of Newtown as part of his constituency.
Right.
He has a portion of Newtown, he has a portion of Bethel, he has a portion of Reading, and a portion of Danbury. And he took some heat for voting against the gun bill, and he actually came on Progressive Soup a number of months ago and explained that he gave me what I would capsulize as being it wasn't a perfect bill, so I voted against it. Of course, now later on, of course, it passed with a huge plurality, and most Republicans, in fact, voted for it too. But Dan didn't. He voted against it, as did neighbor to the north, David A. Scribner, and then they voted against it, and then wanted to take credit later on because the fault that they found in it was not enough mental health provision. But there's a very strong mental health provision in it. But another little mental health provision was added on at the end, and they voted for that. Thank you. But if there had been no bill voted on and passed in the first place, there would have been no follow-up provision.
Right.
So if they had gotten their way, he and David Scribner had gotten their way, They hold on. Basil wants to add something else. Hold on. He ran out of words in the first.
Okay.
So it's okay. Okay. What?
What's he say? Is it about Dan Carter?
He says both of them that their vote sucks, and that's plain and simple. And then Basil pointed out to me the other day that Dan Carter added a new wrinkle to this whole thing about the gun bills, because he tweeted a little message out to everybody that gets his tweets, and the message said that both sides were equally responsible for what happened in Newtown and what happens in schools elsewhere. So you didn't hear that. You were in Italy.
Yeah.
So he sends his tweet out, which basically finds fault on equal fault on both sides of the issue. And the first question that evolves out of that was, who the hell's the other side? We know the one side are the gun enthusiasts.
Right, yeah. But obviously the people would be against guns. Well, who is the other side? Is it the kids and the teachers? Right.
Are they equally responsible? Are the people that want reasonable gun legislation that Dan claims he's for, are they equally responsible for what happened in Newtown? What's going on here? So we took a lot of flack about that, and we'll see if that counts. Oh, okay. Hold on. We'll give Dan the middle phone. Hold on. Got to be from Dan. Hello, Progressive Soup. Is this our friend Dan Carter? It is. Okay, we're going to have to take your question on our follow-up show. We're going to do another show, Dan, but he's getting kind of whimpery about the whole thing, because he's really he's kind of contrite. He's kind of contrite for what he said, but he's a hard-headed guy, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. So yeah, we'll try to get a chance to talk to you during our follow-up show, our Wednesday morning show, our Wednesday morning noon 30 show, which is also after the election. So maybe we'll know how it turned out for you. And with that, Dan. Progressive Soup, David Stevenson, Emily Volpentesta, and the indomitable Basil BuddhaCat from Basil BuddhaCat. Hold on, wrong hand. Presents! Exclamation point.
Thanks for doing it.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow morning, noon 30.
Thanks.
Thank you.